All right, so we have Parshas Behalesecha. We're still on the high from the giving of the Torah, and this parsha, the giving of the man, is one that we read when we don't know which week is the right week to read. In the weekly Torah portion, you always go back to the reading of the man, and the man is something very special. It says the giving of the Torah was specifically well understood by those who consumed the man, and we'll learn a deeper dimension of what the man represents in regards to the type of bread that we eat right now, called hamoitzi lechem min haaretz. Then there are some Rishonim that would say, if you ate the man, what blessing would you make? You couldn't say hamoitzi lechem min haaretz because it didn't come from the ground. Yeah, halechem, hamoitzi lechem min hashamayim, who brings forth bread from the heaven. And we're going to compare the man to Torah and Torah as well. Even though it's given from heaven to earth, we have the heavenly Torah and the earthly Torah. But we'll start with a seeming contradiction between three different verses. It says, "Uviyaredes hatal alamachana laila yared haman aman alav." That's from this week's Torah portion. It says, when the dew descended on the camp, the man fell upon it, which implies that they just went out and got the man with no effort. But you have elsewhere, it says, the Am had to go out, the nation had to leave in order to get the man. Leman anasenu to test you if you're going to walk in the Torah or not. He made you go out to leave the camp to gather it. And elsewhere we have, la'asafa, adds this word, la'asafa, to gather it, which implies like they were spread out and they had to really go far distances. And so there's a discussion in the Talmud, Masechtas Yoma, that says that all three are correct. You know, you have three different verses, they're saying three different things. You know, this is where we get it from, two Jews, three opinions. Here we have three verses, three different ideas of how the man fell, and they were all true. So for some people, if you were extremely righteous, it fell right at your doorstep. There was no effort. You had this perfect alignment with Hashem. The sustenance was automatic. The Beinanim, they had to get up and leave and gather, but this is kind of like a person who recognizes that the sustenance comes from Hashem, and they put in some effort, but they recognize that it's a vessel to be able to receive God's blessing. And then you have Rishayim, who had to go far out to collect the man, which is the mentality that we sometimes fall into when we feel distance from Hashem, and all of our labor is such a big toil, and so much effort and energy, and it's so hard. And this is the attitude of having to go far distances. Like sometimes people feel like they have to go to the ends of the earth just to make ends meet. And although there is, of course, you know, some Rishayim, wicked people who seem to be prosperous, and Tzaddikim that seem to have to work really hard to earn their parnasa. This, you know, Rabbeinu Bechaya in his book Shar HaBitachon, Shar HaBitachon, explains a few different reasons, but essentially breaks it down in a type of way that there are certain things that Hashem understands, and we don't always see the details of the plan, though he does give a few lines of reasoning to understand it. But this is the general principle, or the general way that it works, which is that the more righteous a person is, at least in theory, this is the way that it's supposed to be operating, the less amount of yegia or effort in their toil for sustenance that they have to put in. You know, we have these three terms in regards to how ready the mun was. Some place it says that it was bread, other times it says it was cakes, and other times it says it was grain. So whether it was ready made or like kind of those freezer pizzas, you just gotta kind of put them in. They were like ready to bake, or you just had the ground up material and you had to form it from there. So this also correlates to those three different levels of how ready-made the blessings are. Because we know that all of our brachas come from Hashem. Everything that we have comes from Hashem. But Hashem designs the world in such a way where we need to put in some sort of input, some sort of effort in order to bring out Hashem's brachas. And without those intermediaries, so to speak, the whole system wouldn't work. You could have a lot of different pieces in, all the cogs in the machine, and each and every piece needs to be in place. And so Hashem designed the world specifically in a way where we need to do something in order to bring out Hashem's brachas. And if you ask why, well, after describing the concept of Bitachon, of trust in Hashem at length, Rabbeinu Bechaya asks that very question. He said, if we've just established and drilled deep, for the introduction and 2.5 chapters, that everything ultimately comes from Hashem, and Hashem is really the only person that you could the only one that you could put your trust in, then why does he need us to work at all? He kind of leaves it as a hypothetical, like, well, I don't know, if you just put the food in front of you, you still have to lift it up to your mouth or you're going to starve. You have a glass of water. You're thirsty. What? So somebody's going to pour it down your throat. There's a passage. Hoi kol samaluchul l'mayim. Whoa! All of those who are thirsty, come and drink. It's people who are standing by the banks of the water, and they're screaming, "Water, water!" and they don't know what to drink. So this is a passage that's also used to explain the concept of our yearning for Hashem. A lot of times we feel a strong love and a yearning for Hashem, and we're crying out, "Water, water, quench my thirst for my love for Hashem." And we don't realize, we have the Torah right here. If you're thirsty, you could drink. But even in regards to the physical sustenance, why do we need to work at all? We have a precedent where the man just fell right on our doorstep, and that was good enough.
Well, I think also, isn't it also to show that we're not just expecting everything for nothing, and I also think that as at least for myself, I also feel better when I worked to get something. I feel like I've been a part of its creation, or a part of its, not creation, but a part of its the part of the process. And I think that really gives us an extra level of satisfaction, an extra level of fulfillment.
Yeah. It's almost like an unexplainable nature that we have as human beings, that we're not content with just receiving. And this is what makes us actually have a certain type of likeness to the divine. Because you could ask the hypothetical question, well, God could have created us in such a way where we have no problem just accepting handouts. You see sometimes people that seem like that, right? Now, why didn't God just create us all like that? Wouldn't that be nicer? No, but that wouldn't be nicer, because that would be removing the most human aspect of ourselves, which is a person created in the divine image, that just as God is the ultimate mover and shaker and creator, that we also don't feel satisfied unless we are making it happen. But Hashem has his reasons as well. If a person just received everything as a free gift, then we would be missing the very concept of free choice. the very framework in which choosing good or evil takes place is when there is a lack. If you have everything you need, there's no challenge not to lie, cheat, steal in business because you're not lacking anything. It's only because you're hungry and the food's not even on the table and you don't even have the money to be able to go to the store and buy it and you got to go work and all of the things that go into just getting by is actually a gift from Hashem so that we would have the framework where we can choose to do the right thing. Like there are certain things that Hashem commanded us to utilize and partake in. And certain things that God says are off limits. It's not kosher, or at certain times that you're allowed to work, certain times that you're not allowed to work. And by giving us this lack, he also gives us the opportunity to prove to ourselves our devotion to Hashem. Because really that's the key of a test. It's not like a teacher that doesn't know what mark you're going to get on the test, but really to show you what kind of person you are. That's what it means when it says Hashem is testing us. So one of the reasons why Hashem gives us that lack is, and that we need to work for our sustenance, is in order to have the framework for free choice. And another one is almost counterintuitive. You would think if somebody has everything that they need, imagine you have a individual that has a supporter who gives him everything he needs every day. He brings the ready-made, Uber Eats. He just takes care of him. He does whatever he needs. He cleans his house. You would think this person would be filled with gratitude and want to just adore and worship that one who is taking care of him. But the truth is that the nature of a human being is the opposite. If Hashem were to just give us everything we needed right up front and we never had to work for it, we would grow complacent. And then the pasuk says, Vayishman Yeshurun Vayivot, that Yeshurun, the Jewish people, grew fat and kicked. And we would stop to recognize Hashem's active role in our lives. And so to prevent us from falling into sin and arrogance, he gives us so much of our day that we need to be involved with just working. It keeps us busy.
I also think that there's like, it's like if a teacher is going to give you all the answers to a test, you're never going to study and you're never going to learn anything. So it's like there's the only way to like grow is through that learning, is through that like effort that you're putting in.
Right.
Like we would all be like, arrogant and boring and
right.
and
That's
empty.
It would be so boring that you would need to fill your times with all of the shtutzim v'havalim, all of the emptiness and garbage would end up coming in. That's why, as Yeshiva Baruch, when we'd walk down the street and we'd see, people are playing basketball, it was like, Baruch Hashem, that there is such a thing as basketball invented. Otherwise, who knows what these individuals would be doing to each other or to whatever. It's like, here, they got something to work at, to compete at, to stand on the court all day and something to drive towards. And so, in a kind of ideal sense, somebody could just be working hard and learning Torah all day. But it doesn't work for most people. And that's why in Aves, the Ethics of Our Fathers, it says, Yafa Torah im derech eretz, sheyegias shneim yishkachas avein. That Torah study goes good with a job, because the two of them together keeps a person away from sin. So if a person could really, really take Torah study like it's their 9 to 5 and beyond, it's what they are working on all day and all night, so then perhaps you could say that that's what they are putting their Yegia in. But for the most part, the concept is that you need to have both. You need to have effort in learning Torah, keeping yourself busy with that, and keeping yourself busy with earning a livelihood. And if you didn't, then Hashem would provide. It's kind of like this concept of bitachon, of trust in Hashem. It's if Hashem sees that you're able to be involved in Torah and Avodah all day long, just learning Torah and teaching Torah and prayer all day long, then he wouldn't signal to you that you got to go out into the workplace to put some food on your table. But if you are getting those signals, then it's a humble acceptance of Hashem is doing this for my own good to keep me away from worse things. So that's what Rabbeinu Bachaya says, "Im hu magbir avodas ha'elokim yistalik me'elav torach ha'gilgul," that if he elevates himself and he goes up to the level of a tzaddik, then the torach, all the hard work of earning a livelihood, goes away. If a person prioritizes serving Hashem and trusts Him fully and is already taken care of, doesn't need those two reasons why generally Hashem gives us labor to do, then Hashem takes away the labor. That's where he brings in the obvious question of like, well, if you see tzaddikim that are struggling and you see wicked people that are prospering, and it has a lengthy explanation for that, but this is not really the place for it. But we're just kind of framing the attitude of work itself, which for most of us, 99.9%, we're gonna have to put in labor together with Torah study, and it's ultimately the best coming from Hashem. But that doesn't mean that we leave the manna from heaven behind entirely. We learn about the free gift. I mean, even within the man, we said there's 3 levels. You have falling on your doorstep, going out to collect it, going far to collect it. This is all in the general category of lechem min hashamayim, sustenance that comes from heaven. On the other side, sustenance that comes from earth takes toil. You got to work for it. Like in the farming process, you plow, you plant, you harvest, you gather, you thresh, you winnow. All of these things to knead it into bread and to bake it. And after all of that, the bread has pacellus, it's got garbage in it, it's got a lot of fibers that don't even provide nutritional value, but maybe help you digest it. The man didn't need any of that. It was just pure godly nutrition that provided 100% nutrition and 0 waste. So they were able to be sustained off of even a little bit.
So there was still like effort being made by the trust and by the devotion to Hashem, but that physical toil wasn't there. But it still wasn't like for nothing. You still couldn't, I mean, if you the further away you were from God, the further you had to go to get the manna. So it's like you still like either you're working here or you're working here, but there's work. There's some kind of effort that you're putting in no matter what.
Right. So that's why even in the desert, when it was generally a gift from on high, there were 2 different types of avodah that they were putting in. Either if they weren't a complete tzaddik, they had to go out and collect it or go far and collect it. And secondly, an even more difficult type of work was putting their trust in Hashem on a daily basis. And generally, that's not the order to operate in when we're working with lechem min haaretz. You got a whole process of storing up between the seasons and working things out. I mean, you had certain very holy people, like the Baal Shem Tov as an example, who couldn't go to sleep at night if he still had $1 in his account. He had to make sure to distribute it all to the poor people. And he couldn't sleep soundly unless he knew that today's bread is gone. Once his pantry was cleared out and his resources were absolutely down to 0, then that means that today's job is done and tomorrow Hashem will provide. But
I
this
mean,
is
isn't that also another level of the mana that like you
uh,
couldn't stack it for the next day? You couldn't
yep,
like
right.
you
But
couldn't like gather.
this was someone who, living even thousands of years later, was operating on the manna in the desert type of level. So that was an example of a tzaddik who, the bread fell fully baked, right at his doorstep or right inside, like ready to consume. He wasn't worried about it. How is he going to take care of tomorrow? Whatever, that's for tomorrow. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is, do we experience our work as a curse or a blessing? So when we reframe it as like, oh, this is to keep me away
Depends
from,
on the day.
you know, negative addictions and toxicity that will just consume me. And it also is an opportunity for me to be truly human in Hashem's likeness, in Adam Elyon. Then we're able to see it as a vessel for Hashem's brachas. Or the very work that we're doing is the work of growing bitachon, of growing our trust in Hashem. And then ultimately, even if we don't reach the full level of a tzaddik where we don't need to work anymore, you know, the Rebbe was very against the concept of retirement because he felt like once a person retires, they feel like they don't have what to contribute anymore. A person doesn't retire from their purpose, but you can retire already now from financial worries. You don't have to wait until you're 67 and getting whatever the different dividends are in order to retire from financial worries. That you could do the same way the Baal Shem Tov did, even if there was nothing in the account. But as far as retiring from your purpose, from doing something productive every day, that you never retire from. If you retire from that, you're already dead, right?
Yes. It's like you don't retire from necessarily the hardship, but more like how you see the hardship or how you see the like, if you
Yeah.
have money trouble, you have money trouble, but the worry is the thing. The worry is what comes from the bitachon or lack thereof. That's the hard part. That's the hardest work.
Right.
That's a challenge. It was also I think it's hard for us, both for I think like people as a whole, not everybody obviously, but um to kind of come to terms with like the fact that we're not 100% in charge of our own lives.
Right.
It's not entirely like on me, which is like, it's such a gift for it not to be all on us. But we crave that like, oh, it's we have to do everything or else it's
Uh-huh.
I
Right.
don't know.
That's
I
a
feel like
very important distinction, is that the work is on us, but the results are really ultimately up to Hashem. And so you put an effort into the channel, but you don't think that the channel is the source of the blessing. And that casts off, hashlich al Hashem Yehovecha, it like casts off that massive burden that people carry around on their shoulders that weighs them down. When you can cast that burden off onto Hashem, then you are now free for the first time to actually apply your hands and feet to getting the job done. Because when you're tied up in the what ifs and bearing a burden that's really not yours to bear, it's so taxing that it's stifling your ability to do the job that you were placed here in this world to do.
a really good way of looking at that.
But to connect this back to the man, we can kind of divide the lechem that we spoke about, the lechem min haaretz and lechem min hashamayim, to two different types of Torah. It says, "V'toirasa b'soich ma'i," that the Torah is in my innards. We consume the ideas of Torah and it becomes our bread, our sustenance. And there's two different types of Torah. There is the lechem min haaretz, the bread from the earth, the revealed dimension of the Torah that takes labor. It's filled with questions. You have the arguments and the Talmud, and it needs to be digested. And a lot of the process is like mevarer berudim. You're trying to sort out what's right, what's wrong, how to look at it. This is the whole process of. That's why Jews love questions. It's, ask away. We'll figure it out. And even when somebody has really challenging questions or seemingly heretical questions, it's like, it's okay. It doesn't like threaten. Oh, no, you can't ask that. It's okay. We're working on that. Okay, let's analyze it. Where are you coming from? What's your question? And we've been speaking about this and analyzing it. And that's what the bread of the earth is about. The nigla, the Torah, is about learning, internalizing, trying to take the concepts of faith and Torah and digesting it in a way that your physical mind and heart can relate to and can connect with. And then you have the lechem min hashamayim, the bread from the heaven, the manna. And that's compared to Chassidus. This is like a pure divine light piercing through the heavens. There's no waste. It's all holiness. That's why when it comes to like learning Kabbalah, there aren't as many questions. It's more of a opening to a deeper, transformative idea, something that speaks directly to the soul and elevates the person, even if they're not really ready for it. So there used to be a time when people thought that Chassidus isn't really for everyone. It's somebody who already refined themselves. But because we're on the precipice of the ultimate redemption, the foretaste of Shabbos, that foretaste of the manna that we will have when Moshiach comes, is something that is meant for all the Jews, even those that struggle, to tap into moments in our day where we can learn the deeper dimension of Torah that ends up transforming our very attitude towards our labor, that we can approach it in a tzaddik-like fashion where it's, you might still be putting in a lot of sweat equity, but you're not putting in the same type of mental turmoil into your effort. It's with a certain peace, a certain tranquility, almost like the way that Rabbeinu Bechaya describes the type of avoda, the type of divine service of a tzaddik that doesn't need to work anymore. He just learns Torah and God provides. That we could already tap into that type of reality even as we are cognizant of the signs that we see in front of us, and start living in that type of way. So that's the special era that we are approaching right now, is where the barriers and the hardship and even the labor of having to earn a livelihood. There's a debate now about universal basic income and what are people going to do? Are they going to be bored? Are they going to be sitting? Are they going to be looting and lighting LA on fire? What are people going to do if they don't have to work?
Or are they going to be artists and creators and learners and
right. So we see that we're not 100% there yet, but the world is getting ready for that reality. It's kind of being tested. Where it's like, can you be kind and productive and constructive even if you don't need to work from the moment that you wake up till you go to sleep, like humanity has had to do for the past thousands of years? It's the first time in human history that we've had such a phenomena where people are bored enough to be able to, I don't know, run down the street with keffiyehs screaming about something they know nothing about, right? And it's like, when in human history have we had the luxury of being able to be that free, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think I think that's troubling, but I think that the amount of people that would do good with that time still, unfortunately, we don't, it's not what we see, but I still think the amount of people that would do good with that freedom outweighs the amount of people that would do bad. And, ultimately, I like, like unrelated, but still, I think that a lot of them are being paid for what they're doing. So
Oh, okay. So that is their show.
I think that there's a lot of them that are being funded by, organizations, but
Yeah.
again, it's like
It's,
it's really like it's really like this idea that I'm getting money and it's not for work, it's just for being disruptive. And like all of that energy you could be doing something so great and wonderful with, and this is what you choose to do. And you know, but I think that, and I don't know if this was your intention, but the analogy of like the universal basic income with like the idea of what would we like, how like with that, if we were given the manna, like what would we do with that? It's like a
right.
very good analogy for me in my mind,
But we also we get that opportunity right now as we have little bit more of our own freedom in time and ability to choose how we want to fill our days. We are now being given that freedom of choice in a unique way that we haven't been given in previous times to say, what are we going to fill our days with? Is it going to be leisure or is it going to be that now that we have extra moments, we're going to be working hard in Torah. We're going to be diving into the deeper mystical dimensions of Hashem and growing our love for one another and increasing our capacity to give and to feel and to grow. Because that's the
we're
avoda.
not we're not working from sunrise to sundown to have just enough to not starve.
Right. So
We
we're
do
already
have this ability to have that. We do, like, how many of us don't have any free time? Like, I don't know anybody that has actually no free time.
getting,
You know, we might not feel like it. We might not feel like it all the time, but I think
but
that we
it's
do have
what
like,
it's what we do with our free time that we do have that informs all the other time. And it's like, who are we and what is our priority and what would we do if the whole day was free from financial worries and concern? And this is the month that we will have when Moshiach comes, that we won't have to fill our whole days trying to earn a livelihood and trying to make ends meet, but all of those things will be taken care of for us, and we'll have beautiful homes to live in and plenty of food and wonderful clothing. And when that time comes, are we going to already be in the mode of using our time in a holy and productive way, or is it going to be almost like such a quantum shift that even though it's going to be something positive, it's going to be so jolting, but we can already get into that mode and start tasting the manna right now. And one of the ways that we can do that is specifically through learning Chassidus, learning the inner dimension of Torah. So I just want to close with a little excerpt from Zohar. So, have you ever heard of the Shur Habor and the Leviathan? The two grand animals
oh
that
yeah, the Leviathan and the yeah.
showdown when Mashiach comes?
I have heard of it. I mean Leviathan, yeah. What's the other one? Is it Behemoth?
It's the Shor Habor, which is sometimes translated as the Behemoth.
Okay.
Like And the little caption or picture that I put on for the class was from the Canadians Wonderland. They have the two tallest, fastest rides, and they call one the Shor Habar and one the Liveliathan. And this goes into like some mystical prophecies about what's gonna happen when Moshiach comes. It says the Leviathan's gonna jump out of the water and it's gonna shecht the Shor Habar with its fin, and then the horn from the beast is gonna got the fish, and the tzaddikim are going to sit down for a grand feast with with the fish and the meat, and the manna from and the manna from heaven, mixed with a little bit from the manna that Moshe saved in the Ark of the Covenant. So
Oh.
in the Aron HaKodesh, you have the two tablets. You have the Torah scroll that Moshe wrote with the 5 books of Moses that he finished on the last day of his life, and a little flask of mun, and some of the ashes from the first red heifer that Moshe Rabbeinu made. So all of that's in the Ark. You know, that's why Raiders of the Lost Ark is so interesting. Everybody wants to know where is it? What's going to be? We already know where it is, because we have in a tradition that before the first base of Exodus was destroyed, they took the original ark that Moshe Rabbeinu made, and they put it in an underground chamber directly parallel to the above ground Kodesh HaKadoshim, and that's why when the Babylonians came in, they said it's empty, and they only made a replica for the second base of Mikdash that might have got captured and taken to the Vatican or where else, I don't know. But the original one with the actual tablets and the Torah scroll, if you excavate right below the Har HaBayis, which of course they don't do right now for political reasons, but maybe also for good reasons. um,
Not ready just yet.
when it's ready, when it's ready, it'll come out, and we'll have the manna that Moshe Rabbeinu saved in a little flask, and the Shor Habar and the Leviathan. And so the Zohar explains that there are two different types of tzaddikim. The first is a hidden type of tzaddik, somebody whose service is all spiritual. Their avodah is leyachid yichudim elyonim, to unify supernal divine heights, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who spent 13 years at a cave. His whole MO was just being involved in spiritual unifications, dealing with heavenly things. So when they you have a tzaddik of this caliber, when they would do something, it's like you know they're doing some otherworldly stuff. And then you have tzaddikim that are analogous to the Shor Habar. They're walking on dry land. They are focused on mitzvahs and actions and putting the Torah into deed, inspiring everyone around them to do Hamaisa Hu Ha'ikar. The action is the main thing. V'samachta b'chagecha, rejoicing and physically partaking in all of the mitzvahs. That's like the revealed aspect, living on dry land. And so the Leviathan will slaughter the Shor Habar, meaning it will elevate the Shor Habar through its power of spiritual ascension alluded to in its fins that allows it to swim from one end to the other, to soar from one side of heaven to the other side of heaven, all the way to the highest heights. It's going to use its fin to elevate the tzaddikim that are called the Shor Habar, the Behemoth tzaddikim that are mitzvah-oriented, to reach this highest height of divine service. But then the Shor Habar will also got the Leviathan, which will bring out the advantage of the physical action. How when Moshiach comes, it's going to be not just souls expired from the physical form, but the ultimate height is when there is no contradiction between the body and the soul, and the two are able to work harmoniously together. And so, even though it might sound gruesome with the way that it's kind of, but the whole idea of shechita is really to draw up and to elevate. You know, like when we take an animal and we make it and prepare it kosher to be befitting to be elevated on our tables. This is a process of uplifting. And even though a fish doesn't need shchita, just the very gutting or the preparing it for a Shabbos feast, and the custom within Jewish families is to have some fish and some meat on a Shabbos table. This is kind of like a foretaste of the world to come. Because when Mashiach comes, we're gonna have both of them. We're gonna have fish and meat, and we have the fifth group of tzaddik, who's completely subsumed within the world of Torah. The waters compared to the Torah, they're completely encompassed in the holiness. And then you have the Shorabar, the one on dry land, which is about bringing that holiness down to earth and making it something visible upon the land, not just subsumed within the ocean. And so this is the three ingredients for Mashiach. We have the Shor Habar, the Leviathan, and the Man. So we started with the Man, putting our trust in Hashem and recognizing that even though we do need to put in work, it's really for our own benefit. It's what enables us to be able to stay away from toxic behaviors that will just eat our souls alive and help us focus on using the time that we do have to study Torah. And the more we're able to exercise that, the more Hashem gives us that freedom to be able to focus on spiritual pursuits all day long. And ultimately, even our job is a part of our purpose here in this world, and we're making a difference, and we're able to view it in such a attitude as part of our divine service rather than something divorced from it. And then all of our days are filled with eating the manna. And then we reach these levels of tzaddikim where we have moments of Shabbos or Torah study where we're like the fish, the Leviathan, completely subsumed with the water of Torah. And then when we leave our prayers and we go into the world, and all of our interactions are all filled with acts of goodness and kindness and doing mitzvahs and making the world around us into a good and holy and godly place.
Well, that's great. That's wonderful. This has been so great. I needed this today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I look forward to more of this Shabbos.
Okay, are you coming this Shabbos? Wonderful.
Yes, yes, I'll talk to Mishki later tomorrow, I think.
Great, great.
It's been kind of a crazy week. I started work this week, so this has been exactly what I needed to hear.
Wonderful.